New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. Ta-da! Hey there! Good to have you here. It's Tuesday. You know what that means? We have a live show, and I see my friend Catherine already here. It's good to have you here, Catherine. And I know everybody else will be walking in here very shortly. We have a little bit of an interesting show today. This is all based on something that happened to me yesterday, and I really kind of got into the weeds thinking about it. I wanted to share it with you. Michelle, hello. Very nice to have you here today. I haven't seen you in a while. Anyway, so we have that going on. Also, have you seen my email about the master classes that we have? Those are happening like starting next Monday. I had this notion that one of the reasons why we get stuck maybe in eating habits that we don't necessarily want, or we're not feeling our best, or our energy levels are low, or whatever. We always have to harken back to the food. It's a basic. And so these nutrition master classes are all about making sure that all of the boxes are checked and that you can say, yes, I understand this target trifecta thing. And oh, I didn't understand this and I don't understand that and blah, blah, blah. Food and nutrition are the thing. It's a fundamental of everybody's life. And if you're going to take a look at your health and what have you, bottom line is foundationally, you got to have your nutrition dialed in. You just do. If you want to feel good in your body, if you want to look your best, if you want to have the energy levels that you want to have, then it's absolutely crucial that your nutrition is dialed in to the point where it becomes an automated thing. That's my goal for you. And that's what these courses are all about. You can buy the whole thing, or you can just go one class at a time. There's different classes. And we're going to start this off Monday. We're kind of doing it through, let's say, the summer, actually, because there's 7 classes. I think you're going to like them. So check it out. Go to savingdinner.com/nutrition to get more information. Anyway, I'm really excited about that. And I think it's something that everybody, well, you'll just have to see. Each class is over an hour. An hour. You're not getting our emails? Well, I'll tell you what, Michelle's not getting her emails. This is what you do. If you ever have a problem and you're not getting what you think what you should be getting, send us an email to support@savingdinner.com and we'll answer it. We'll get right back to you. Also check your spam filter, because sometimes, we say something spammy, I guess. I don't know. And it goes right into the spam filter. I hate that, but it happens. So we have that. Those are some things that we have going on. The other thing is I have the Full Bloom Day that we're offering. Now that is not, it is not an inexpensive day, but it is something that is super cool if you've decided this is something you want. I spend the day with you and take you out to lunch. I go through your labs. I look at absolutely everything and say, okay, these are my recommendations for you. This is what we're going to do. Okay, Michelle, if your email has changed, then you email us at support@savingdinner.com and we will get that new email entered in. So you have to email us because we don't know what it is. Okay? Anyway, Jocelyn's in the house, guys, everybody. I'm so glad she's here. So we have that. So the Full Bloom Day, if that's something that you opt to do, you can do it virtually or you can do it in person and come into Brevard and stay at a little Airbnb or something, and I'll pick you up. I will take you for a walk on the lake. Think about what this day would look like. You'd get to meet Lincoln, come into my house. I'll make you a smoothie. And then we'll sit down and start going through some stuff and see where your glitches are, where the obstacles are. How do we overcome them? And then the next part, I take you out to lunch, the lovely little lunch out in the sweet little town of Brevard. And we will talk about mindset stuff, and we would be, it's just be really cool. And we just like, these are some things that we can do. And have you, considered this? And can you be considered that? It's like genuinely a hot seat all day long, right? And then we go back and we finish up. I give you supplements to go with everything that you have. We'll even look at your labs if you want me to. Okay. But there's a lot of pre work that we do. We set the table for that day and we make it extraordinary. So if you're interested in anything like that, if you want to do it, even if you want to do it virtually, we can still do it. You go to savingdinner.com/bloom. That's what we're going to do. That's how it's going to get the work done. And I will tell you, I did this one time, 15, more than that, probably close to 20 years ago. And I did it specifically for my business, changed everything. There were things I did not see. I needed somebody who had a pair of eyes that weren't mine to look at my stuff. I think we're all like that. That's how life works anyway. Alrighty then. So you know what's going on with these master classes that are going to be starting on Monday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern. That's at savingdinner.com/nutrition. You know about the Full Bloom Day. You can find that at savingdinner.com/bloom. And also, our quote of the week is a fabulous Brene Brown quote, which I've been holding fast to lately. And it goes like this: we can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both at the same time anyway, which is so true. Not at the same time. So, and I will explain what that's all about in today's show. Okay, so let me set the, oh, and by the way, my son's dog, Tuna, his name's Kai Tuna. He was named after a river. My son's dog, Tuna, is having surgery tomorrow. It's going to be expensive, and his friends, his community, have put together a GoFundMe. And you'll see that in the PSs on all my emails this whole week, because if you want to support him, you go ahead and support him, because I firmly believe in community. I believe in expanding our borders. And we will have a link here that Jenny will put in the chat here if you want to look at that. But I can't believe the outpouring that he's had for this. But so tomorrow he is having his dog operated on to see the extent of the cancer that this dog has. And he's pretty young, so he shouldn't be having this, but they aspirated a tumor on his belly, and he's got a couple more in his mouth and another one on his back. And it came back with cancer. So tomorrow they do the surgery and they'll take all the tumors and, look at his lymph nodes and whatever else that they do when they're doing all of this. But it's a big surgery. And tomorrow's would have been my mother's 92nd birthday. And tomorrow was the day that we had scheduled to take Luna, Caroline's dog, to cross the Rainbow Bridge. Okay. Now, then, so I found my vet did this. So I called and made an appointment, and then they told me it was going to be $840. And I said, what? But there's a woman here in the whole Asheville area who does that, and she's a veterinarian, and she does it for a whole lot less. So we are scheduling her this week as well. So you can see there's been a little bit of a piling on. I wrote a Substack that was basically, where are you, God? Because I had a real meltdown after I heard about Tuna, my son's dog. My daughter had heard, I think you heard the story, but my daughter's husband left her, and now her beloved dog is dying, and she was sobbing in my arms. First he leaves me, and now she's leaving me. And that's really hard to take as a mom. So I wrote a whole Substack about that. And yesterday, I was out there with my doggy, swimming in the lake and everything, and life just seemed really good at that moment. A neighbor walked up to me. I'd had some weird words with her before, but it's okay. I kind of processed all of that. And she walked up and we were just kind of catching up with everything. And she said, "So what's going on with you? How's Caroline, and how are your kids? What's up?" And I explained the whole thing about Caroline's dog and about Peter's dog and everything like that. And she said, "Well," and she looked at me, um, and she said, "Well, at least your child's not dying of cancer." So, and then she started on going into detail about a mutual acquaintance of ours whose daughter is dying of cancer and how terrible it all is, and blah blah blah. And of course, I immediately said, "Yeah, that's just awful and that's horrible and thank God." And I'm not going with that. And I kind of felt ashamed and sort of like, "Oh, I shouldn't have even mentioned this when this other thing is going on." And, um, later on, I was in the house and I was making dinner and I was thinking about all of that. And I felt like, you know, I sort of felt dismissed, like, "Oh, well, your pain isn't anything. Your pain means nothing. You don't have a kid dying of cancer." And I was like, "What is this that we do this?" Because I've done it before. I'm guilty. I've had this done to me more than once. And I thought, this is why I'm bringing this up, because why do we do this? Why do we do it? Well, there's an actual name for it. It's called comparative suffering. Comparative suffering. And when it's somebody's trying to basically rank pain. In other words, your pain's not as bad as their pain because they've got this going on and that going on. And it was sort of a one-upsmanship of pain. And I look at that and I think, why do we do that? What's up with that? So the whole idea is that someone else is going through something objectively worse, right? So therefore, your pain should somehow shrink. It should be less than, because this is so much worse, you know? She even said something along the lines, "Well, at least it's just dogs." So I started thinking about this, and it took me a minute to process because I was kind of stunned by this. And I know she meant it in a well-meaning way. And by the way, this woman used to be a pastor. Just saying. Um, Pain doesn't work like that, because pain isn't a competition on who's got it worse. Pain is pain, and pain means suffering in some way, you know? And you don't have to earn your right to be upset by qualifying your suffering against someone else's. But we do that. We do that. And we do this whole, we've talked about how, comparison is just evil, and how comparison is the root of all discomfort and everything else. It makes us feel bad. So, oh, Jane, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Um, no one gets to decide how deep your pain feels. Exactly, Catherine. That's exactly it. So, what is this then? Why do people do that? Why do people do it? Um, and this is what I came up with. And I think it's that most people do not know how to hold space for other people's discomfort, suffering, grief, or pain. So they're looking for a way to wiggle out of it. And it's with, well, at least, it starts like that. So instead of validating it, they make an attempt to reframe it into something they can manage, right? Because it's about their discomfort. They can manage. So they shrink it, or they distance themselves from it by using this kind of a comparison. And basically they're saying, "Yo, hold the phone here. Let's not go too deep. Let's shift gears into something I feel safer commenting on. Like, well, at least it's not this. So it is dismissive. I felt dismissed. It is dismissive because it is. We don't have the right to decide just exactly what Catherine is said, how someone's pain is relative to their own pain, relative to somebody else's pain. You don't get to do that. Your pain is your pain. And if somebody is saying that, it's because they don't know how to just sit with that themselves. It's uncomfortable, you know? It is uncomfortable. But suffering is suffering and grief is grief. Am I right? Jane knows this one. Well, when you're watching your child go through something painful, something that is beyond your control, whether it's a dying dog or a broken heart or both at the same time, I'm going to tell you, it hurts like hell. And then when you have the choice of, I wrote in my Substack, to me, it was like a Sophie's choice. My son essentially needed me. He just got this diagnosis of his dog. And I've got my daughter here, right here, with her dog and with her broken heart and all of it. And I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do here? I cannot win in this whole situation. But the thing is, and this is where I am, and after I've kind of come to peace with this decision, is what I need to do is make a decision for myself. My pain deserves full empathy. This woman just couldn't give it to me. And that is something that I can say to her, or within my soul anyway, it's all right. You don't understand. It's okay. I'll let that go. Okay. It was tough. So, when somebody is doing this, though, this whole thing, it's what you're feeling doesn't deserve full empathy. If that's sort of how it came across. And then, that's a lie. But then I countered that with, she doesn't understand what it is to sit with somebody with full empathy, because it's too hard. It's too uncomfortable. And there's a lot of people out there in the world, and that's why they come up with this whole comparative suffering thing. And I don't want us to be those people who do that, because it's not loving. It's not loving at all. It's saying, well, dismiss that because this is so much worse. So feel good about what you have. It doesn't work that way. And why do people do this? Well, a couple of them is because they're trying to help poorly by saying, see how you don't have it so bad? They're emotionally unequipped. That's why I say that they can't fully empathize with what it is that you're going through. And they don't realize how much that comment hurts rather than helps. Otherwise, they wouldn't be saying it, right? And then they're also internalizing the toxic belief that only the worst suffering deserves deserves the airtime, if you will. Deserves to be being talked about. This is just a dog. This is these people's daughter, for heaven's sakes. You see where I am? Hey, Lynn. Hi. So when this happens, for me, it took me a mighty long time, hours, to process all of this. And, I had to look at that and just say, she's just trying to fix it by comparing it to something. So that's about her. It is not about me. It's not about my pain. It's about her inability to deal with my pain, right? She had to distance herself from it. She had to draw a line. Well, at least it's not that. I could have said, yes, what they're going through is unimaginable, but this is really hard for my son too. And it matters. I could have said that. But that would have put her in a place of discomfort. Also, I will tell you, I did not have the wherewithal to even think that. Later on I did. Later on I'm thinking, yeah, I should have stood up for my pain, kind of a thing. But you have to temper what it is that you're saying with what it is that you want. What is your end goal here? My end goal here was to understand her and her inability to sit with my empathy. It made me realize too, because I'm thinking, is this something that, is this a person to pursue as a friend? No. I will keep her in the acquaintance department, and she's a lovely woman. I like her. I like her dog. I like that we're neighbors, etc. But I'm not going to pursue a friendship with her because somebody who I pursue as a friend is somebody who I know I am safe with and can give her my pain, and she could sit with it like I can sit with hers. Do you hear what I'm saying? Hello, my friend Nancy. Mother Hen's in the house. So I decided at the time this isn't worth my energy because I was a little bit ticked and didn't quite know exactly how I felt about it. But I gave myself full permission to feel what I felt and decided that I had no business having any shame wrapped around the fact that my children were suffering and therefore I was suffering too, and that it all mattered. It all mattered greatly, and that I don't have to feel ashamed of that at all. So, this is the bottom line. Your pain doesn't have to be the worst in the room to be valid. Your pain does not. And if we are the women that we want to be in full bloom, living our lives authentically, fully, heart, mind, body, and soul, then we are the kind of women who can sit with each other's pain. We can make space for the grief. We can be okay with saying, that's just awful. Even if we know, comparatively speaking, that there's somebody very close by who's really going through something completely tragic, like the loss of a child or the loss of a spouse. It doesn't make their pain any less. It's a different type, but how many different flowers are there in the world? And they all bloom, right? It doesn't mean that only roses can bloom and everything else is just a bud. They all bloom. And we get an opportunity to appreciate every single one of them. This is what it's like when we take each other's pain on a little bit and we just love them through it. And that's something that I wrote in my also wrote in my Substack, which really helped me to get through this whole thing because I was really having a hard time. You can ask, I couldn't have a conversation without crying. I was on the phone sobbing with friends and talking with my husband, and poor Jenny had to hear me too, crying and what have you. And I'll tell you, going through it and knowing I just need to go through this. I need to accept this is what it is right now and stop asking why, for heaven's sakes. Because I was really having a hard time and thinking God had really left. I mean, I kept saying, why the dogs? Can't you just leave the dogs alone? You know? And then the people who are also saying, oh, finding meaning in it, you'll find meaning later on. There's no meaning in cancer, people. There's no meaning for that. Later on, there might be something that comes out of something. You think about, um, the gal who was kidnapped, something smart. I can't think of her first name. But when she was kidnapped and everything, I mean, that's nothing good about that. But what came out of that after she had processed it and gone through it all and made a decision to, Elizabeth Smart, thank you, made a decision to create the life that she created is, I mean, obviously a complete testimony, but we cannot look at that and say that was a good thing. It was horrible. But out of that horribleness, out of that ashes, she created beauty, right? And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but I'm talking about in the moment. I'm saying comparative suffering. when we do it with ourselves, when we do it to others, and when we at least it isn't X, Y, and Z, it's dismissive, it's painful to the person that you have just done that to, and it's wrong. And what it points to is the lack of empathy in your own heart. So if you've done this out of habit, out of discomfort or whatever, cut it out. You're better than that. You are a woman living in full bloom after all. But if you have had this happen to you and you've looked at it and going, oh, I mean, I had this happen when I had a miscarriage. I was 14 weeks pregnant, had to go to the hospital and the whole way. Well, at least the baby wasn't fully formed. Well, at least, oh, I can't even tell you how many times I heard that. All from my church family, right? That's comparative suffering. People do that. People do that to dismiss your pain to make themselves more comfortable. But your pain is valid. It doesn't have to be the biggest in the room, and it is worthy of compassion from yourself and from others. And never feel ashamed. It's just a dog, or it's just a 14-week-old fetus, not a fully formed baby. Why? Why? Let's keep those comparisons out of pain. Pain and suffering is real. We all go through it. We don't need the garbage thrown at each other. And we don't need to be the throwers of that garbage because we know better. We're kinder, we're gentler, we're empathetic, we're compassionate, we're fully bloomed women. And that's how we roll. So in closing, I just want to say to you this: keep your heart open, empathetic, gentle, loving, receptive, and kind. This is what we need from each other, not to be dismissed, not to be compared to, or thinking that our suffering is so much less because of X, Y, and Z. It is just simply not true. We all suffer, and we've all suffered and felt the pain and cried, just like I have. I'm not alone. This is what happens, when you're living your life. It's part of it. So thank you again for being with me. And my son needs, if you want to help him save Tuna, Tuna's having the big surgery tomorrow. My daughter's dog Luna is going to be crossing the Rainbow Bridge this week as well. We're trying to get it scheduled. And it's just, there's a lot right now, and there's been a lot of tears. Thank you for the prayers for my family. I appreciate you. And if there's anything that I can ever do for you, just send me an email, support@savinggdinner.com. I answer every single one of those. You know that. Peace be with you. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.